welcome to Sewing Mojo. So today we're going to be talking about hand sewing, specifically basic hand stitches. So first up is the running stitch. The running stitch, as you hear, is basically running. So we're just going to go up and down. This one is a simple stitch. All you really need to do is go up and down. So the needle, point it up, pull through, and go back down, preferably about the same distance as the last stitch, and then you want to come up about the same distance. This one is good, especially for closing things. You can tighten it. It is what I use for the pin cushion I make, and it just does one of these, or you can just lay it flat. On a sewing machine, we would do a lock stitch, and it would basically be the running stitch, if you will, of a sewing machine. So yeah, it's a really good stitch, and one that you should definitely know if you get into hand sewing. Next up is a back stitch. So I have this little sheet of paper. I do have it linked in the bottom for PDF, and it's about a 3/4 of an inch, and as you can see, there is numbers along the bottom and along the top. So this is a back stitch, and the reason why it's on paper instead of a piece of fabric is that way it's easier to interpret, and also because it's less flimsy. So you, on a back stitch, will go up on number 1. And then you're going to go down on number 2. That is about equal distance. So unlike the running stitch, which goes forward one way, back stitch goes forward 2, back 1. So, but the only parts that you will see is the back 1. So once I have the needle up on 3, there we go. And I'm just going to continue doing this. I'm going forward 2 on the bottom and back 1 up on top. And this stitch is good for ending, similar to the running stitch, but unlike the running stitch, the back stitch is a little bit more secure. On a sewing machine, there is a back stitch on that. If you've watched the sewing machine video I showed you, some have buttons. And yeah, this one is really good, and here is one that is already completed, as you can see. And there are a few mistakes in this one, which is why it's a good idea to practice this one before applying it, because you might hit a snag on the way, and it's good just knowing how to do it for practice. Anyway, this is a very good one and should definitely be one that you know if you're going to make small little stuffed animals or are going to use hand stitching in any way. Next up is a slip stitch. So this is a hidden stitch. There are many different types of hidden stitch. This is personally my favorite, and one that is probably the easiest to do. So what you want to do is you want to go on to the inside, and you want to try and put the needle through. And you want to try and keep that knot hidden. So I'm going from the side because I have this little opening on the side, but you will find that if you go underneath and just put the needle through, it'd be the best. So for slip stitch, you can do it so that way you come out on top. I would suggest going off a little bit at an angle to the side and just continue that way. So that way it doesn't look like the fabric is coming together in an odd fashion. So slip stitch is really good for ends. If you've seen tying off, a lot of that was done with a slip stitch. And you want to try and have a sharper needle. I'm using a pretty dull one right now, but a sharper needle is helpful, especially because if you're doing a traditional slip stitch and you have only one thread, then you are going to probably only go 1 to 2, depending on what you're doing, threads of fabric on the other side and then come right up. For a dull needle, this can get kind of complicated, but for a sharp one, this is easier. So I'm going multiple threads over, like 7 to 8 on this one. And this makes it go pretty fast. As you can see, there is a little bit of a tight squeeze, and you can see the stitch pretty easily as long as you're looking for it. And I am just going to go back down off to the side a little bit so you can see. And what I just did was I dropped the thread. So this happens a lot if you're doing a traditional slip stitch with only one thread, because there is no knot on the other side. So there's one knot and you have to slip the thread back through the eye and pull out. But I'm just gonna go back underneath, and this time I'm only gonna do about 3 threads and just pull through. There we go. And I'm just going to keep on doing that. There we go. And I find that this is very helpful, again, if I'm closing stuff. Also is very helpful for shirts and closing small tears, and or even doing a finishing touch on a pillow. And this is the slip stitch from the other side. This is not the side you would see. This one you would do on as the finished side. So it has to be as hidden as much as possible. But as you can see, because I went up on top more, then it caused a little bit of this weird ridging sort of thing to happen. But yeah, this is a slip stitch. It is a very useful stitch when doing hand sewing. There are many other types of hidden stitches. This just happens to be my personal favorite. So yeah, that was slip stitch.